Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning, NAPS family. Wherever you are listening to this podcast, thank you for doing so. You are listening to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm the president of Branch 32. I'm Robert Wakefield. Thank you. That's right. All right. Got a great show lined up for you today, so go ahead and let's pour that first cup. Your credit score matters now more than ever. That's why the Nashville Post Office Credit Union brings you Savvy Money right inside our mobile app. With Savvy Money, you can monitor your credit score, understand what's being reported, and learn how to keep your credit strong, all from the palm of your hand. Stay informed, stay protected, stay empowered. Savvy Money, smart credit tools at your fingertips. Brought to you by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. And for our first cup this morning, let's start by doing this. Let's all take a deep breath and exhale. Here we go. That's right. The Christmas season is behind us. Now, we're not out of the peak whatsoever. We still got some things to do, I'm sure. What I remember, it was always after Christmas was sometimes as bad. But anyway, you did it. You got through Christmas. Congratulations. Now grab that cup of coffee. We're going to keep rolling with our Don't Quit series. And in the weeks before, we've talked about several things. We've talked about not quitting on yourself and how important that is. We've talked about not quitting on your team, on your employees, and how you can be successful there. And then in the last podcast, we talked about don't quit on the standards. I just couldn't come up with a better word than that. So the standards is what it is. But today we're going to focus on something that can make or break every workplace, postal service or any place. And we're going to talk about this. Don't quit on communication. Now you think about it. Every success and every failure, every misunderstanding in the workplace usually comes down to communication. Now, clear communication, that builds the trust. But the poor communication, all it does is breed confusion. And when supervisors quit on communication, your team feels that. It's not just talking. It's listening, it's clarifying, it's making sure that the message lands the way it was intended. Have you ever said something and it didn't land the way you wanted it to, and people got offended by it? Oh, good gracious. I know I have. I have done that so many times, it's not even funny. One time I was working the window at the Lewisburg, Tennessee post office. And this lady came in and she started talking and we were cutting up and laughing and everything. And as she was about to leave, I looked at her and I said, listen, I really appreciate your hostilities. Now, we were cutting up, we were playing, we were joking around. The word is supposed to be hospitality. But as a joke, I said hostilities. Well, it didn't land the way I wanted it to, and my boss, my postmaster, got a call from that lady. And I was stunned. I said, well, golly, I'll apologize to her. She was being goofy as I was. So I'll be sure to say I'm sorry the next time I see her. but it didn't land the way it was supposed to. And that happens all the time. And it's so important that communication matters and that you make sure that your message lands the way you want it to. So how do we keep communication strong, especially in the middle of the holiday rush, which we just experienced, or how do we do it afterwards? Well, here's some helpful tips that you might need. Be consistent. Don't let your employees guess what you mean. That's absolutely the worst thing we can do. Be consistent with what your language is. Be consistent with your communication. And use plain language. Isn't that a good thing? Do you read the Postal Service's, the messages they send out? Sometimes they use the fanciest words, and I don't have the foggiest idea what they're talking about. Use plain language. Make sure your message is clear. And then you can always check for understanding. You can ask, does this make sense? Or my favorite thing to do after every stand-up talk, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? That's your chance right there. And that gives you a chance to do the next most important thing about communication is listening actively. You know, the best communication sometimes is if we let somebody else talk. That works in every single relationship, no matter if it's your spouse, your children. Sometimes the best communication is just simply listening actively. And if you have to document important points, make you a quick email and send that out. Sometimes that prevents confusion at a later date. Now, these are not complicated steps, but they can make a huge difference. You know, here's something worth reflecting on. Communication, and I read this somewhere. I thought this was pretty good. Communication is the bridge between standards and integrity. You can know the rules. You can have the right intentions. But if you don't communicate them clearly, well, that never works. They fall apart. Now think about your employees again. How often do you pause just to check with them? How often do you clarify the expectations? How often do you listen without interrupting? That's a biggie. Those small habits that you can do add up to some big results. So it's just something to reflect on, that it's just the bridge between those standards and the integrity. We're going to talk more about integrity in future episodes of the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Now, the Employee and Labor Relations Manual, our ELM, is full of standards and procedures. We're going to talk a lot about the ELM in 2026. But here's the thing. If those standards only work if they're communicated. If employees don't know the rules, they can't follow them. And if supervisors don't explain the expectations, they can't enforce them. You know, communication is the delivery system for the standards. And without it, the ELM is just a bunch of words on paper. So don't quit on the communication. Whatever you do, we're a communication company, and sometimes we're the worst at it. Even when you're tired, even when the clock is ticking, even when the pressure is high, you take an extra minute to explain, to listen, to clarify. That minute can save hours of confusion later. And remember, communication isn't just about efficiency. To me, it's much more than that. To me, it's respect. When you communicate clearly, you show your employees that you value their time, their effort, and their trust. It's just really, really important that communicating with your employees leads to a better life for everyone, you included. So remember, don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on your team. Don't quit on your standards. And definitely don't quit on communication. It's that important. All right. That's going to wrap it up for the first cup. Let's go ahead and let's pour that second cup. Do you need a little breathing room in your budget? With the Skip-a-Pay program from the Nashville Post Office Credit Union, you can take a break from your loan payments. That's right. No stress and no penalty. It's simple, fast, and designed to help you stay ahead when life gets busy. Whether you're managing unexpected expenses or just need a little extra flexibility, we're here to help. Ask us how to skip your next payment today. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I want to look back at 2025. Thank you, that was fun. I want to look back at 2025 and what it means for the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. And I was looking through some numbers here, and it's pretty interesting to see how many listeners we had and all that good stuff. And listeners in 2025, this is when I recorded this, we had 1,800 listeners total for the year. We had 2,400 downloads. That's how they count podcasts, how many downloads they have. But I just thought it was really interesting that we had over 1.8 listeners at one time, all throughout the entire year. And so I was really willing to tell you all how much I appreciate you sharing this podcast with your friends. I make it especially for Branch 32, but I make it for anyone who wants to listen. I think Branch 32 may be one of the only branches that has a podcast, and I think that what makes us unique in some ways. And so, but I just really appreciate Branch 32 sharing this and listening to it, and for all of you who listen, I thank you for that as well. You're the one that makes this program go. I also want to thank the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. They are our official sponsors for this podcast. Without them, I couldn't do these things, and I really do appreciate their sponsorship as well. So I just wanted to kind of take a brief inventory, and this is going to be kind of a short podcast today, and it's the last Saturday of 2025. We will kick off 2026 with our next podcast. So again, thank you all for making this a lot of fun for me to do. So thank you so much for listening today. You know what to do. You know what you are required by federal law to do. You're required to share this. You're required to like this. Okay, maybe not required, but I sure would appreciate it. You can find it on YouTube. You can find this podcast on Spotify. You can find it at Apple. You can find it just about everywhere you get your podcast. So there's no reason why we can't make this even bigger in 2026. And I need your help in order to make that happen. Again, thanks so much for listening to Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next year. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupofJoe@gmail.com.